Have you ever had that strange feeling that you're living only a fraction of what you could truly be? As if your mind were asleep like a caged lion, powerful, but still? Now imagine. What if there was a training, simple but unknown, that could unlock 100% of your mind's potential? A silent, discreet path, but so profound that it could forever change the way you see life. But here's the danger. The same training, if used incorrectly, can become an invisible prison, locking you inside your own mind without you realizing it. You're about to find out how the brain can be your greatest teacher or your jailer. What determines this? What you choose to do still today. The invisible button that no one showed you. There's a precise point within the mind where everything can be transformed. An invisible, silent button hidden behind the noise of routine, haste, and incessant thoughts. It's not physical, but it's there, waiting for the moment you decide to see it. Most people spend their entire lives without even suspecting its existence, because to find it you have to stop, observe, and question what has never been questioned. Why do I think the way I do? This button is the moment you become aware, not of the things around you, but of yourself. And once you activate it, there's no turning back. Your mind expands, your senses deepen, and for the first time, you feel truly alive. But here's the danger. If you don't know how to handle this button, it can deceive you. It may seem like you're awake, when in fact you've only changed prisons. The mind has layers, and every time you think you've reached the end, you discover there was another veil. Therefore, pressing this button once isn't enough. You need to keep pressing it every day with every automatic thought that arises. Because what seems like an awakening may be just another dream, a more sophisticated, more beautiful dream, but still, an illusion. Only those who choose to go beyond the first layer understand the true power this invisible button holds. That's why so many give up halfway. Because it's not about learning something new, but about unlearning everything that was placed inside you without permission. The button that activates 100% of your brain is dull, unattractive, and will never be sold in any course. It's hidden precisely because the world works better with people who haven't found it. You can live your entire life with an extraordinary brain, locked away, and all because you never learned to silence yourself internally to hear what truly matters. The truth is, this button only appears to those who stop looking for shortcuts. It's not activated by force, nor by intelligence. It reveals itself in presence. When you're here now, with your mind clear as a sky before a storm, and when that happens, you realize you've always had it in your hands. You just needed to see it. 2. The autopilot trap. You wake up, brush your teeth, have coffee, pick up your phone, and before you know it, it's night. Another day gone by. Another chapter of your life written not by you, but by habit. Autopilot is that invisible force that lives inside your mind and that little by little erases your consciousness. It's silent, comfortable, and absolutely dangerous. Because it doesn't destroy you all at once. It consumes you slowly, like a leak that corrodes stone. The brain, when untrained, loves this state because it saves energy. But this saved energy comes at a cost: your freedom. The trap of autopilot is that it disguises itself as productivity. You think you're being efficient, that you're doing what needs to be done, but in reality, you're just repeating the same mental patterns day in and day out, without pause, without reflection, without depth. And worst of all, the longer you live like this, the harder it becomes to escape. Your brain adapts, neural pathways strengthen, and thinking differently begins to hurt. You start to avoid the discomfort of change and embrace the comfortable prison of routine. But living in this mode is like having your eyes open and still not seeing. Shihung Yi would say that true awareness begins when you realize how unconscious you've been, and that's the breaking point. When you wake up inside your own dream and realize you're being controlled not by someone outside, but by the habits you've nurtured. Training your mind to break out of autopilot isn't about stopping everything and becoming a monk. It's about observing yourself, even while you're living. It's about questioning the small gestures, the small thoughts. It's about starting to notice that you're reacting rather than choosing. What few people know is that when you break this cycle, even for a few seconds, something changes within you. A clarity emerges, as if you were in the back seat of your own car and for the first time taking the wheel. And it is in that moment that the training begins. The real training, being present in a world that wants you absent. Breathing deeply in a world that rushes by, thinking deeply in a time of distractions. This is the way to escape the trap, not by running away from it, but by seeing it so clearly that it dissolves on its own. 3. Training the guardian of the mind. Within the brain lies a structure called the ascending reticular activating system. It may sound too technical, but what it does is profoundly human. It filters everything you perceive. It's like a gatekeeper. A mental doorkeeper that decides what goes in and what stays out. What few realize is that this gatekeeper doesn't act alone. It's constantly trained by what you focus on. If you train your mind to see problems, it will ignore solutions. If you train it to judge, it will stop observing. And if you train it to survive, it will forget how to live. This guardian is active 24 hours a day. But the problem is that if you don't consciously train it, it will be trained by social media, television, other people's opinions, and inherited fears. It will filter the world in a limited, blind, and anxious way. And you will live believing that this is the only possible world. But it isn't. The mind, when properly trained, begins to reconfigure this filter. It begins to notice details that previously went unnoticed, to find beauty where there was only haste, and to see paths where there were only walls. This isn't magic, it's neuroplasticity. Shi-Hung Yi teaches that it's not about controlling the world, but about controlling your focus. Because it's focus that trains the guardian. And over time, you realize that this filter isn't just a mental mechanism, it's the gateway to a new reality. The same life, the same problems, the same body, but seen differently. As if you'd cleaned a cloudy lens and suddenly everything became clear. This is the power of training the guardian, transforming the quality of your mind and, with it, the quality of your life. And here's the final secret. The guardian doesn't respond to force. It responds to repetition. It's reprogrammed by what you do every day, not by what you say you believe. It's through silent practice, intentional focus, and a return to presence that it molds itself. And one day, without warning, you realize that what once limited you now sets you free. 4. Overthinking is the new poison. Do you believe that overthinking is a sign of intelligence? That the more you analyze, calculate, and plan, the better your life will be? This belief is killing more dreams than failure. Overthinking is the new poison of the mind. It paralyzes, suffocates, and creates fears where none exist. And most dangerously, it gives the illusion that you're being productive, when in fact you're just spinning in circles. An overthinking mind doesn't create solutions, it creates labyrinths. And each thought becomes a wall, a doubt, a never-ending what if. This overthinking generates a kind of constant internal noise. You may be silent on the outside, but inside, there's a storm raging. And the more you try to silence, the louder it becomes. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Thoughts need space to dissolve, not more thoughts to justify themselves. Shi-Hung Yi teaches that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of clarity. And to achieve it, you must let go of the need to control everything with your mind. Because there are things that can only be understood when you stop trying to understand. Most people confuse thinking with wisdom. But wisdom isn't an accumulation of ideas. It's the ability to see clearly. And clarity only appears when you slow down internally, when you allow your mind to stop chasing its own tail. Overthinking is like using a powerful tool incorrectly. The human brain is a masterpiece. But when you overload it, it starts working against you. It creates monsters that don't exist, problems that aren't there, and excuses that prevent you from taking action. True mental training isn't about thinking more, it's about thinking better. It's about realizing when your thoughts are serving you or enslaving you. It's about knowing when to let go. And that's the moment where everything changes. When you choose silence not as an escape but as a direction, because it's in silence that answers appear, not as shouts but as whispers, and those who listen transform. The silence that activates the impossible. In a world where everything screams, silence has become a rarity. But it is precisely in this that the secret lies. While most people chase techniques, formulas, methods, and promises, there is a more subtle and infinitely more powerful path. Silence. Not the silence from without, but from within. The kind that only arises when you disconnect from the demands of the world and turn within. This silence is not empty. It is full. Full of presence, of perception, of answers that cannot be heard amidst the noise. It is in this inner space that the impossible begins to seem possible, because what you call a limit is often just excess mental noise. Shi Hongyi says that silence is the moment when a warrior hears himself. When the noise ceases, even the smallest signal from the mind becomes audible. And there, you begin to realize how much you were being driven by patterns you didn't even know existed. The brain, when trained to silence, begins to activate parts that were dormant. Your attention expands, your intuition ignites, and your awareness rises. What was confusing begins to clear, and what seemed impossible begins to take shape, because now you are present to see what was always there. But silence is frightening, because in it you confront everything you've avoided feeling. It reveals what distractions hide. That's why many run away from it. They seek noise, movement, occupation, anything that prevents them from connecting with themselves. But this encounter is inevitable if you want to access the true power of the mind. It's no wonder that great masters, warriors, monks, and sages have always sought silence before action, because it is in silence that direction is revealed. And acting without direction is just agitation disguised as productivity. The practice of silence is the most underrated exercise today. People want quick shortcuts, but they ignore that silence is the most direct gateway to the deepest depths. A real minute of silence is worth more than hours of empty content. And the more you get used to it, the more you begin to notice something extraordinary. The mind, which once dominated you, now obeys you. And when it obeys, the impossible becomes just the next step. 6. What you pretend not to know, you know. You've always known, but you chose to ignore it. Because accepting the truth requires courage. The human mind is a master at creating distractions, excuses, and stories to avoid confronting what really matters. And this is one of the greatest mental blocks there is, pretending not to know what, deep down, is already screaming inside you. You know you're repeating patterns. You know you're avoiding decisions. You know you're betraying yourself with small choices. But you keep telling yourself that it's not the right time, that you don't know what to do. And so you create the most dangerous prison, the one that seems comfortable. Shi Hongyi teaches that awareness is not something you acquire, but something that reveals itself when you stop running away. The mind, when trained to the truth, becomes unbeatable, because it stops wasting energy on internal lies. And this energy, when redirected, transforms into clarity, action, and freedom. The problem is that truth hurts at first, because it demands change, and change demands loss. But the question you need to ask yourself is not, what will I lose if I change? But rather, what have I already lost by staying the same? Pretending not to know is a form of refined self-sabotage. It's easier to say you lack information than to admit you lack decision-making. It's more comfortable to blame the world than to acknowledge your own omission. But no evolution is possible without confrontation, and there's no confrontation more powerful than looking at yourself with brutal honesty. When you stop pretending, the weight lifts, Your mind, previously burdened with doubt, aligns, and what seemed confusing reveals itself to be simple. You already know. You just need to act on it. The key is to stop waiting for external permission to do what you already feel internally. When you train your mind to face the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, you activate a force that was dormant. It's not heroic courage. It's simply the end of denial. And in that end, a new kind of life begins. One that no longer needs to hide behind excuses, because now the truth has become your guide. 7. Doors that only open from the inside. Have you ever tried to change someone? Have you tried to show them a better path, offer help, extend a helping hand? And still, nothing changed? It's because some doors only open from within. No external force, no matter how great, can make someone change if the decision doesn't come from within. And the same goes for you. We often wait for the world to push us toward growth. But true growth only begins when you turn the internal key. That silent decision that says, I can't accept living like this anymore. The problem is that we're so used to looking outside ourselves for answers, validation, direction, that we forget the power we have within. And this distraction leaves us weak, dependent, and vulnerable. The mind, when untrained, seeks external solutions for internal pain. But the most important doors in life don't have external handles. You can listen to 1,000 pieces of advice, watch every video, read every book. But nothing will work until you say, it's up to me now. Shihung Yi teaches that true discipline begins when you decide to act even when you don't feel like it. Because it's in that choice that the door opens. Not because someone forced you, but because you allowed it. This kind of training, of radical responsibility, transforms the mind into an ally, because it stops waiting and starts moving. And when it moves with intention, everything around it begins to change. It's as if the entire universe responds to that silent but unshakable internal decision. So the question is, what door within you has been locked for too long? What decision have you been putting off, waiting for an external signal? What's missing isn't more knowledge. It's the courage to turn the key. And once that door opens, you can't go back to the previous state, because the freedom that comes from within is the only one no one can take away from you. 8. The brain that creates or destroys your world. Everything you experience begins in the brain. It interprets, reacts, decides, judges, and feels, even before you realize it. But here's the secret few know. The brain doesn't understand the difference between what's real and what's repeated. If you repeat pain, fear, or worry, it transforms them into physical reality. If you train presence, focus, and intention, it transforms them into concrete action. Your external world is merely a reflection of how your brain has been trained to operate. And this training happens every day, whether you like it or not. If you don't choose how your mind works, someone else will choose it for you. The algorithm, society, fears, traumas, external voices. And when this happens, the brain begins to destroy instead of build. It becomes a silent saboteur, creating negative scenarios, anticipating failure, and blocking actions. You begin to live in a hostile internal world, even if everything seems normal on the outside. This is how the power of the mind is locked away, not with chains, but with repetitive, unconscious mental patterns. But the opposite is also true. When you consciously decide to train your mind with focus, repetition, silence, truth, your brain begins to build. It activates powerful neural networks, strengthens decisions, and clarifies intentions. You begin to see paths where you previously only saw obstacles. You begin to act with greater ease, confidence, and energy. And this internal silent movement changes absolutely everything around you. It's not magic. It's biology applied with consciousness. Therefore, the biggest mistake is to think you need more power. You already have it all within you. What's missing is direction. And that direction begins with a simple but non-negotiable practice: taking control of your own mind. Because it will build your world, or it will destroy it. The choice is yours. It always has been. If you've made it this far, something inside you has already begun to stir. Maybe it was a word, an idea, a nagging feeling, or perhaps that feeling that you needed to hear exactly this right now. And this wasn't by chance. The mind, when ready, begins to attract the right signals. What you just saw isn't just content. It's a mirror. A reminder that there's a gigantic power dormant within you, waiting for only one thing: your decision. The mind can be your greatest teacher or your worst enemy. And what defines this isn't luck, destiny, or talent. It's practice. A daily, silent practice, invisible to the world, but one that transforms everything from within. And if you felt this video touched you in some way, don't ignore this call, because the brain that limits you today can be the same one that will free you tomorrow. As long as you keep going, keep searching, keep training, keep awakening. So if this journey made sense to you, subscribe to the channel now, not just as a gesture of support, but as a commitment to yourself. Here, each video is a new key, a new portal, a new chance to go deeper within yourself. And together we can create a space where the mind isn't a prison, but a temple, a sacred place where you learn to live with more clarity, strength, and presence. The world outside is noisy, chaotic, and fast-paced, but here you can breathe, think, feel, and most importantly, evolve. So click subscribe, activate the bell, and join this tribe of seekers, people who have chosen to live consciously, not on autopilot. Your journey is just beginning, and it will be extraordinary if you allow it.